Open your banking app right now. Look at the number. That number is not just money. It is your stress level. It is your sleep quality. It is how many what-if scenarios run through your head at 2 a.m. A different number in that same app would mean a different version of you. Calmer, freer, less afraid. This video walks through every level of bank balance, from $0 to $10 million, and shows you exactly what changes at each one. Not just financially, psychologically. Find your number. The $0 balance. Zero is not just a number. Zero is a feeling. Zero means every notification on your phone is a threat, a bill reminder, a subscription renewal, a low balance alert from the bank itself, the same bank that charges you $35 if you go below zero. At zero, you check your balance before you buy anything, even a coffee. You do the math in your head before the card even reaches the machine. Zero means your financial decisions are not really decisions. They are reactions. Something breaks, you react. A bill is due, you react. There is no planning. There is only responding. The psychological research on this is consistent. Financial scarcity consumes cognitive bandwidth. It is not that people at zero make worse decisions because they are worse at decisions. It is that the brain is running a constant background process, calculating, worrying, scanning for threats, and that process uses up mental energy that could go toward literally anything else. At zero, you are not just broke. You are tired. A specific kind of tired that has nothing to do with sleep. The $1,000 balance. $1,000 changes something specific. It is the emergency fund threshold that financial educators talk about as the first real milestone. Not because $1,000 solves everything, it does not, but because it solves the most common emergencies. A car repair, a medical copay, a broken appliance, the kind of unexpected expense that, at zero, would mean a credit card, a payday loan, or asking someone for money. At $1,000, that same expense is just handled. Annoying, but handled. Here is what is interesting about this level psychologically. The relief is disproportionate to the amount. $1,000 is not a large sum, but the difference between 0 and 1,000 is the difference between every emergency being a crisis and every emergency being an inconvenience. You still check your balance often. You are still careful, but the checking comes from habit now, not from fear. The $10,000 balance. $10,000 is where the conversation starts to change from survival to strategy. This is enough to cover 3 to 6 months of expenses for many people, the standard emergency fund recommendation. This is enough that a job loss does not mean immediate panic. You have runway. At this level, you start to think about where this money should be. Should some of it be in a higher yield savings account? Should some of it start working in an investment account? The question shifts from, do I have enough, to, is this money working hard enough for me? This is also the level where many people experience a strange new emotion, the fear of losing what they have built. At zero, there is nothing to protect. At 10,000, there is something. And that something creates a new kind of vigilance. You sleep better at this level. Genuinely. Studies on financial well-being consistently show that having 3 to 6 months of expenses saved is one of the strongest predictors of reduced anxiety. Stronger, in many studies, than income itself. The $50,000 balance. $50,000 is where most people stop thinking of this money as savings and start thinking of it as capital. At this level, the money itself starts to matter less than what the money represents. Options. A down payment on a home becomes realistic in many markets. Starting a small business becomes possible. Taking a career risk, leaving a job, going back to school, relocating, becomes financially survivable. This is also where lifestyle inflation becomes a real threat for the first time. $50,000 feels like a lot. It can tempt spending that did not exist before. The car upgrade, the bigger apartment, the vacation that becomes a habit rather than an occasion. The people who build real wealth from this point are the ones who treat $50,000 as a foundation to build on, not a reward to spend. At this balance, you have genuinely crossed from financial survival into financial choice. The anxiety of levels 1 and 2 is largely gone. What replaces it is a new kind of attention. The attention of someone managing something rather than someone surviving something. The $100,000 balance. $100,000 is a psychological milestone that financial writers have discussed for decades, and for good reason. This is often the hardest $100,000 someone will ever accumulate, and also the most transformative. At this level, compound growth starts to do meaningful work. If this money is invested and earns a reasonable average return, the growth in a single year on $100,000 can exceed what many people are able to actively save in that same year through their own labor. This is the moment money starts working as hard as you do, sometimes harder. At this level, banks, as we discussed in the bank treatment video, start to take notice. Wealth management conversations begin. The relationship with financial institutions shifts from transactional to something closer to a partnership. Psychologically, $100,000 represents proof. Proof that the system works. Proof that consistent saving and investing actually produces results. For many people, this is the number where they stop wondering if they will ever build wealth and start planning how much. The $500,000 balance. $500,000 puts you in a different category of financial life, even if your day-to-day routine looks identical to someone with a fraction of this amount. At this level, using a conservative withdrawal rate of around 4% annually, a figure widely discussed in retirement planning, this balance could theoretically generate approximately $20,000 per year indefinitely. Not enough to retire on for most people, but enough to meaningfully supplement other income. This is the level where private banking access begins, as we covered in the bank treatment video. Dedicated bankers, better rates. A different kind of relationship with financial institutions. Psychologically, something important happens here. The fear of a single financial setback destroying everything largely disappears. A job loss is a serious event, but it is not an existential one. There is a cushion thick enough to absorb real shocks. People at this level often describe a specific feeling. Not wealthy, exactly, but safe. Genuinely, structurally safe in a way that did not exist at the lower levels. The $1 million balance. $1 million in the bank. It is the number that an entire industry of financial media has built itself around. The number that represents, for most of human history, wealth itself. Here is the honest psychological reality of crossing this threshold. The day you cross from $999,999 to $1 million, nothing changes. You do not feel different. Your life does not transform overnight. The number is largely symbolic on the day it happens. What does change, gradually, over the months and years at this level, is the relationship with risk. At $1 million, using the same 4% framework, this generates approximately $40,000 per year indefinitely without touching the principal. Combined with other income, for many people, this starts to represent genuine optionality around work itself. Not necessarily retirement, but the ability to say no to things that do not serve you. This is also the level where the conversations from the bank treatment video become very real. Dedicated teams, investment access, the kind of financial infrastructure that compounds advantages on top of advantages, the psychological weight of money, the thing we discussed in the salary levels video, begins to genuinely lift here. Not because $1 million is infinite, it is not, but because the floor beneath you has become solid enough that you stop checking if it is still there. The $10 million balance. $10 million represents a different relationship with money entirely. At this level, the 4% framework generates approximately $400,000 per year. This is not a number most people will ever need to use for living expenses. It is a number that exists primarily to grow, to be managed, and eventually to be transferred. The psychological experience at this level, based on what wealth psychology research consistently finds, is not one of constant euphoria. It is one of quiet. The daily hum of financial anxiety that exists at every level below this one is simply absent. But something else replaces it, a different kind of attention. Tax planning, estate planning, philanthropic decisions. The questions shift from, will I be okay, to, what do I want this money to do? For my family, for causes I care about, for the future. This is also the level, as discussed in the bank treatment video, where the relationship with financial institutions becomes fully bespoke, teams, custom products, white glove everything. Here is the thing that surprises people when they study wealth at this level. The jump in daily happiness from $0 to $100,000 is measurably larger than the jump from $1 million to $10 million. The early levels are where the psychological transformation happens. The later levels are where the financial transformation happens. But the person experiencing it often feels remarkably similar to who they were before. Let us bring everything together. At 0, every day involves managing fear. At 1,000, the most common emergencies stop being crises. At 10,000, survival becomes strategy, and sleep improves measurably. At 50,000, money becomes capital, and real choices become available. At 100,000, compound growth becomes a genuine force, sometimes outpacing your own labor. At 500,000, structural safety arrives. A single setback stops being existential. At 1 million, the psychological weight of money begins to lift. Not because the number is magic, but because the floor finally feels solid. At 10 million, the financial transformation continues. But the psychological transformation, the largest part of it, already happened many levels ago. Here is the most important thing this journey reveals. The biggest emotional shifts in this entire scale happen in the first $100,000, not the last million, not the 10th million, the first 100,000, which means, wherever you are on this scale right now, the most significant psychological progress you will ever make with money may already be ahead of you, closer than you think. The number in your banking app is not just a number, but it is also not your identity. It is a snapshot. And snapshots change. This is not financial advice. Please consult a qualified financial professional before making any financial decisions. Check out other Broke Monkey videos for more financial topics explained simply and clearly. If you want to support this channel so we can keep making these videos, check out the link below. Apes together strong.